when you look at the countries with the longest-serving leaders, you may not always feel they have the most enviable political systems. Equatorial Guinea, Kazakhstan, Cambodia are all up there with leaders who've been in power for decades. And depending how you count it, Paul Biya of Cameroon holds the current record. He's been either Prime Minister or President there since Harold Wilson was in power here. But it is to avoid the traps of long-serving leaders losing touch that so many countries have limits on the numbers of terms leaders can stay in power. Now, in China, the ruling Communist Party has proposed a rule change that would remove presidential term limits and allow President Xi Jinping to extend his rule there, apparently indefinitely. Not everyone is keen on the change. It's provoked a backlash on social media, and some critics have expressed concerns that the move is reminiscent of the last Chinese leader to rule without term limits, Chairman Mao. Well, I'm joined now by author and commentator Diane Wei Liang and by Professor Steve Chang from the School of Oriental and African Studies. Very good evening to you. Firstly, is this going to happen, Diane, do you think?
Absolutely, it will happen. And this is actually one of the steps that's being planned over the years. And if you recall, and Xi Jinping was elected core leader of China not long ago, and he was given the supreme power, and now there's a constitutional change. Right. So it has been going on, and it has been not only going on the surface of a leader power struggle, but also behind the doors, right, where Xi had managed to depose a lot of the people who were potentially be able to challenge him in the power in China.
Okay, so let's ask why this is happening. Steve Chang, what do you think is going on here? Is this man just a megalomaniac, or what's happening?
Well, I think two reasons. One, he's doing it now because he can. It's got to a point that he has consolidated his position, he is in a sweet spot, and the resistance within the party is not going to be able to stop him. And he also liked the idea that after 2023, he can still go on formal state visits. That is the only...
You think he's interested in the trappings of...
Well, that is the only difference for him to stay on as state president or not.
Hang on, he's running the country, isn't he? He runs the show as well. He gets to more than just the fancy banquets and a nice car, doesn't he?
Well, he doesn't run the country as president of China. He runs the country as General Secretary of the Communist Party of China. There is no term limits to how many times he can serve as General Secretary. He already indicated in the 19th Party Congress last October that he would stay on as General Secretary.
Right, so president itself is irrelevant, or is trappings of power, and he already had... Well, is that correct, Dan? Do you see it that way?
I don't believe that is the case. Let's remember how the term limit came to be. It was instated by Deng Xiaoping, who was never the president of China, however, wielded enormous power behind the scenes. And it was after Mao's death, after the end of Cultural Revolution, that Deng Xiaoping put in the term limits in the power of China to get away with what had been in Chinese history. There had never been term limits for either communist leaders or emperors. And that was his way to reform the political system.
It was a big reform, isn't it?
Absolutely.
I mean, Steve Chang, do you believe in term limits? I mean, you really do have to look around the world, and people who've been in power more than 12 years generally have generally lost it, haven't they? I mean, they did...
Oh, I completely agree. I think 10 years is normally as long as you should be holding a top office in any country, in any government. I am not saying that Xi Jinping is doing the right thing. I'm simply saying that he is doing it because he thinks this is the right thing for him to do for China. To Xi Jinping, he is China.
But, Diane, you think it's a little bit ominous. I mean, you think it's more than a bit ominous. Is this a step back for the idea that Chinese democracy would slightly... China, as its economy developed, would slightly liberalise and become politically more liberal? Is this a step away from that?
I think that has always been the idea of the West, had never been embraced by China. If you look at Xi Jinping, he is what we call the Red Princelings. His father was one of the great marshals who founded the Communist China. And he grew up in a way believing it's his destiny to rule China. And perhaps he feels duty to the country. But on the other hand, has always been in his psyche, regardless what happened to his father in the Cultural Revolution, where he was deposed by Mao Zedong himself. So he grew up in such way, and when he took power, I don't believe he ended up in the sweet spot by accident. It all being very much carefully planned.
But there was quite a social media backlash in China yesterday, and people saying he's trying to make it like North Korea, which is quite a stretch. But I mean, in a sense, that's a good sign that people are willing to say, who is this guy?
And it's equally indicative that all those voices has now been harmonized, as they would put it in China. They've been shut up.
Right.
And that is how you create a harmonious society. You simply harmonize the voices.
You remove the comment section from below the article if the people are making rude remarks.
Or indeed, if the article is not pitching the story in the right tone, that story doesn't get pitched at all.
Yeah, far from a democracy quite like ours. We better leave it there. Thanks both very much indeed.
Thank you.